Have you ever heard stories of people diving into spiritual practices only to end up facing something terrifying? Certain rituals can unlock energies that push the limits of the mind and body. Many people think spirituality is all about peace and enlightenment until they come face to face with forces they never imagined. If you're not prepared, the experience can be overwhelming. A lot of people get into spiritual practices expecting only calmness and clarity, but the reality can be much more intense. In Tantric Buddhism, for example, practitioners often encounter terrifying forms of energy manifestations that shake their mental and emotional stability. These appearances aren't just symbolic. They challenge a person's ability to deal with forces beyond ordinary understanding. Imagine being in deep meditation and suddenly feeling an overwhelming presence. That's the kind of experience many people face when they begin tapping into deeper layers of consciousness. Tantra and other spiritual practices involve invoking powerful energies that don't always appear in a peaceful way. Deities and entities can manifest with grotesque forms, burning eyes, and expressions of pure rage. And there's a reason for that. These manifestations are meant to bring out hidden fears within the practitioner, forcing them to overcome them. Those who aren't prepared may experience intense emotional or even physical reactions because their minds can't handle the intensity. This is why great spiritual masters emphasize preparation and guidance before diving into these paths. Throughout history, there have been accounts of monks and yogis fleeing from spiritual retreats after encountering entities that seemed to devour them alive. What many don't realize is that these beings aren't external forces but projections of their own psyche. When someone faces a demonic-looking entity during a ritual, they're actually confronting their own fears and insecurities in a condensed form. Those who make it through this test develop a rare mastery over their own minds, but those who fail can end up more lost than before. And this leads us to the next crucial point, the danger of counterclockwise movement in energy practices. In many rituals and spiritual practices, movement plays a key role in how energy is directed. Clockwise motion is often linked to creation, stability, and harmony, while counterclockwise movement can open doors to chaotic and unpredictable forces. Monks and yogis are well aware of this and avoid moving in reverse within sacred spaces unless properly prepared. But those who ignore this principle may experience disturbing effects, from intense physical sensations to unsettling visions that shake their inner balance. There are reports of practitioners who unknowingly entered temples or sacred sites and started spinning in the wrong direction, only to later feel a sudden weakness, nausea, or a deep sense of unease. This happens because counterclockwise movement can disrupt the body's natural energy flow, exposing the mind to dimensions it shouldn't access without proper protection. In Tantra, certain rituals require this kind of movement, but only after years of training. Without control, the experience can be overwhelming, like messing with high-voltage electrical wiring without knowing what you're doing. Many accounts describe people who, after engaging in practices involving counterclockwise movement, experienced vivid nightmares and reality distortions for days. Some even report a chilling sensation of being pulled toward something they can't see. This is no joke. Mastering energy requires discipline, and every movement has a specific purpose in spiritual traditions. But if handling energy the wrong way can be dangerous, imagine what happens when that energy turns against you. This is exactly what we're talking about when it comes to Shiva and the power of Visha. Shiva isn't just a mythological figure. He represents immense cosmic forces that few can truly grasp. His blue throat, marked by the poison Visha, symbolizes the ability to contain destructive energies without being consumed by them. On a spiritual level, this means that when someone starts working deeply with energy, they may encounter poisons, repressed emotions, intense fears, and forces that can be lethal for those without the necessary balance. Many people step into spirituality without realizing that the search for truth also brings extreme challenges. When someone accesses higher states of consciousness without preparation, they may feel a violent storm of emotions, as if their very existence is falling apart. This happens because, just like Shiva, they must process and contain these energies before they become destructive. That's why practices like pranayama and certain mantras are taught in stages. An intense energy surge can completely destabilize an unprepared person. The poison doesn't have to be literal. It can manifest as paranoia, mental exhaustion, or even physical symptoms that seem to come out of nowhere. Some practitioners report feeling as if they had ingested something toxic after deep meditation, nausea, fever, and disorientation. What they were facing wasn't a physical illness, but a side effect of activating certain energy centers. When this internal poison starts spreading, one must know how to contain it, just like Shiva did. But what happens to those who can't handle this energy? For them, the impact can be devastating, leading to extreme reactions, like believing they're literally vomiting blood, a clear sign that something has gone terribly wrong on their spiritual path. Handling spiritual energy is no joke. Many traditions warn that those who aren't properly prepared can suffer serious side effects, both physically and psychologically. There are reports of practitioners who, after trying to manipulate energy without the right training, experienced extreme symptoms: dizziness, severe insomnia, a crushing sensation in the chest, and in the most extreme cases, even believed they were vomiting blood. But why does this happen? When someone taps into forces beyond their capacity, their system can collapse because it simply can't handle the intensity of the experience. Think of a regular electrical wire being overloaded with a current far stronger than it was designed for. What happens? It burns out. The same principle applies to spiritual energy. An unprepared body and mind can shut down under the pressure. Many beginners ignore this danger and dive straight into advanced practices without realizing that certain paths require years of training. That's why great spiritual masters emphasize grounding techniques, specific postures, controlled breathing, and even dietary practices that help stabilize the system. Without this balance, the experience can be devastating. There are cases of people who, after reaching altered states of consciousness, reported disturbing visions, an overwhelming sense of a dark presence, and an inexplicable fear that lasted for days. It's not that something external attacked them, it's that their own energy was released in an uncontrolled way. Spiritual practices require respect, knowledge, and most importantly, patience. Without these, the energy that's meant to elevate can end up destroying. And speaking of energy, one of the most intriguing manifestations appears in the feminine aspect of spirituality, where deities can take on forms that are just as fierce as they are terrifying. In many spiritual traditions, especially in Tantra and Hinduism, feminine deities are depicted with intense and sometimes frightening forms. Kali, for example, is one of the fiercest manifestations of feminine energy, portrayed with her tongue out, a necklace of skulls, and an expression that blends rage with compassion. But why do these representations exist? Because yogis don't worship deities just to ask for blessings. They invoke these energies to test their own ability to handle raw power. If someone walks this path without preparation, they risk being consumed by what they encounter. Advanced practitioners understand that it's not just about venerating these forms, it's about learning how to channel their power without being destroyed by it. Some spiritual lineages teach that by deeply meditating on these manifestations, the mind begins to reveal its darkest fears. The goal isn't to scare, but to purify. It's a process similar to a warrior training to face a powerful enemy. If they're not ready, they'll be crushed. The problem is that many beginners jump into invocation practices without the necessary preparation, thinking it's all about peace and enlightenment. This explains why there are so many reports of people who, after trying to connect with one of these forces, felt pure terror, like something was watching them or getting closer. It's not an evil entity, but rather a reflection of their own energy, which they don't know how to contain. This is exactly why spiritual masters always emphasize the importance of proper guidance before stepping into this realm. And for those who think these manifestations are just symbolic, that's a serious mistake, because once certain energies are awakened, they can completely transform someone's experience, for better or worse. Are you really ready to deal with these energies? Spiritual practices are not a game, and without the right preparation, they can have unexpected consequences. What would you do if you encountered something that challenged your very sanity? Now that you understand the risks, the choice is in your hands. Want to keep learning about this world? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything.